So you can continue to submit questions to the chat for this next section, but we won't probably have live questions. We are going to gather the questions, and Matt has agreed to answer them, and we'll put them out in another email. But now I have the great pleasure of introducing Matt Caffrey, the Senior Director, Grassroots Community Organizing. Matt is a career organizer for candidates and causes that promote social, economic, and environmental justice. He joined Swingleft in 2018 and leads their efforts to grow and support progressive grassroots groups like us. Please welcome Matt Caffrey.
Hey, thank you so much, Don, and great to be with you. And I was so inspired to hear from Representative Bonamici. I think it's clear that she and the other House Democrats are doing so much good work for us in Washington. And it's a big part of what we need to do together is to help keep them in the majority so that we can keep making progress on all the issues that we care about. So it's inspiring to hear from the actual humans who are doing the work in Washington. Don, I believe we had some slides that we were going to take through. And there's me. So you've heard all of this, and yeah, great to see some friendly folks in the chat and on the screen. Amy and Erica in particular, great to see you. Want to talk about what's at stake this year. And again, I think Representative Bonamici really helped lay this out. But just to kind of make sure we're not skipping over anything, we have accomplished so much together thanks to the incredible work that volunteers all across the country did over the past 5 years, really. So if you go to that next slide, we have made real progress on COVID relief. You know, as you heard, 76% of the country now vaccinated. It was something like 2% of the country or 1% of the country when President Biden was inaugurated. Major steps toward environmental protection, many of which are happening kind of quietly, going through the administrative, rulemaking process. Not a lot of people are noticing, but it is going to make a huge difference to the nation's emissions and the clean air and clean water. Of course, the infrastructure bill, which we've spoken about so much, sitting in the city, the largest city in the United States that does not have any form of rail-based transit. I am incredibly thrilled that the infrastructure bill passed. We are finally supposed to get Amtrak service the next few years, thanks to that bill. Thank goodness, about time. And then, of course, yes, historic diversity in the cabinet, in executive appointments of all types, including in the judiciary. The most diverse judiciary appointments ever, and the most judicial nominations and confirmations in the first year of a presidency ever, which after the beating the American judiciary took over the last 4 years, or the previous 4 years, very, very pleased to see that happening, and now an opportunity to appoint a Black woman to the Supreme Court for the first time in history. So there's a lot of good work that has happened and is happening across the administration, across the government, thanks to, again, all of the hard work we did to flip the White House and the Senate. But there's still so much more work left to do. So go to the next slide. Right, the pandemic is still not quite over. We don't know when it will be. You heard so much about climate change, about voting rights, about childcare. My wife and I spent almost $20,000 on childcare for one child last year. So let me tell you, yes, it is completely unaffordable. It is insane. The judiciary, despite the progress that the Biden administration is making, is still made up of many too many people who really shouldn't be there, who aren't particularly legitimate. If you think about the 6 Supreme Court justices, 5 were elected by presidents who hadn't won the popular vote. The 6 Republican Supreme Court justices, I should say. Anyway, and again, abortion access deeply threatened, and that Supreme Court may undermine abortion access in many, many states across the country this summer, which is very scary and a real prospect. So yeah, there's a lot at stake, right? This is not one of those years where it's like, well, we beat Trump and everything's fine, Democrats are in power, like we can kind of take it easy. No. Everything is at stake. We are making progress. We are moving in the right direction, but it is all perilous. Next slide, please. What is Swingleft proposing that we do about all of that? Well, first of all, we feel that we're in this this moment where we're transitioning from resistance into persistence, where again, we know that this fight is going to continue, that it really doesn't end in a democracy. We are always going to struggle to build the world that we want to see through our democracy, to strengthen our democracy, to preserve our democracy. And so I have been increasingly talking about the work that we all do, not as resistance startups, which is the way I think many of us thought about ourselves in 2017, but as democracy unions, where we are building collective power together to preserve our democracy in a way that's sustainable and in which each of us has a stake. Each of us has an obligation to contribute, but also we reap the mutual benefit of that collective power as well. So that is how I want to encourage us to think about this work going forward. It is not something you do in sprints until you're exhausted, but rather something where we pace ourselves, we build it into our lives, we make it fun and joyful, we make it sustainable, because this is going to be something that is with us for a while. Next slide, please. So our 10-year strategy to defeat Republicans up and down the ballot, show them that a fight against American democracy is a fight that they won't win. That is what we are working to do. So what does that mean? So first, next slide, please. First, we have to defend Democratic majorities in the House. Second, defend Democratic majority in the Senate. And then this year and in years to come, as we go through this decade, we need to build power in the states. It is a wonderful thing that Oregon has easy voting, from home, and is a model for the country. That didn't happen by accident. Oregon was not always a blue state. I remember when Oregon was competitive in presidential elections and Republicans made real plays to win Oregon. I imagine many of you organized to help build power in Oregon over time and transition it to be a blue state, right? We have a plan we'll look at in a moment that will hopefully build power, build capacity for Democrats in key states. Realistically, we're not going to try and win everything, but we think that there are some states where we can start to move the needle so that as we go into the next decade, the next census, which I know feels impossibly far away, Democrats are in a stronger position. And all the way along the way, between now and then, Democrats are in a stronger position to protect the right to vote and many of the other things we care about in key states. Next slide, please. So this year, what in particular are we targeting? Well, this year, we're focused, and sorry, my 2-year-old is running in. I mentioned the childcare. This year, we are targeting U.S. House seats, United States Senate seats, gubernatorial seats, and then state legislative chambers as well. So, in your neck of the woods, we have one congressional target, that is Oregon's 5th district. So Representative Bonamici spoke about 3 districts in Oregon that will be competitive. Swingleft thinks the 5th is the most competitive of those 3, the most potentially endangered, and so that's the one we are focusing on. We think that that is the one that is likely to have the biggest impact on which party will control Congress this year. But other really critical fights exist in the Pacific Northwest. So Washington's 8th congressional district also we think will be very important. And then, 2 critical Senate seats in Pacific time, if you will, both Nevada and Arizona. So maybe those aren't places you can go to canvass. Maybe that isn't possible for you, but we do think that they would be great places to phone bank, as an example, or to send letters, or to do some of the other things that we do. So, right, in the Senate, we have 3 great Democratic senators that we'll be working to defend: Mark Kelly, Raphael Warnock, and Catherine Cortez Masto. And then we have 3 great opportunities to flip seats from red to blue. First, an open seat in North Carolina, admittedly a state that Donald Trump won twice, but very narrowly both times. They have a Democratic governor. It is a perennial swing state, and it's an open seat, which gives us a really great opportunity to flip it. We have another open seat in Pennsylvania, where Toomey, supposedly moderate Republican, is retiring. Great opportunity to replace a squishy-ish conservative with a strong Democrat, and we've got a number of great candidates running there. Actually, I should also mention in North Carolina, the primary is mostly wrapped up. Sherry Beasley appears to be the likely nominee. Then in Wisconsin, Senator Ron Johnson is perhaps in the top 5 most radical members of the Senate. He's he is pretty reactionary, radical, whatever. You know, he's more or less in the Josh Hawley caucus, if you will. He is breaking his pledge to only serve two terms, to run for a third term. And so we think he is badly out of sync with his very moderate state. And so we are looking forward to the opportunity to defeat him this fall. So that's the Senate. Next, in the governor's mansions across the country, 3 great opportunities to retain seats for Democrats. Gretchen Whitmer and Tony Evers were 2 of our excellent flips in 2018, who are wonderful governors in purple states that Democrats need to win in the future. And then, of course, Pennsylvania has an excellent Democratic governor who's term limited, and they've got Ben Shapiro is almost guaranteed to win that primary in Pennsylvania. So we'll have an excellent, he's the current attorney general, we'll have an excellent candidate. And then in Arizona, Georgia, and Florida, we've got opportunities to defeat 2 incumbents and flip 1 open seat. Just I saw in the chat, you know, how endangered is Raphael Warnock. Georgia barely, by the skin of our teeth, went to Democrats in 2020, both in the presidential election and then in the runoff. I think we have to assume that race will be incredibly competitive, and we'll have to fight very hard to retain his seat. The same goes really for Nevada and Arizona. We're not taking on any fights where they don't really need our help. You know, we are only taking on the fights that we think this is one of the seats with the best opportunity to either flip a seat or defend a vulnerable Democrat and help us retain the majority. Next slide. Just want to quickly show the state legislative map. Again, this is a long-term strategy for us. So short-term here means either 2022 or 2024, we think it's possible to flip the majority from red to blue in these chambers: Arizona, Michigan, and New Hampshire. New Hampshire is always very hard to project, always very hard to determine, you know, targets. It's a really hard place. They've got lots and lots and lots of tiny tidistricts for the wisdom of the founders of the New Hampshire Constitution. Anyway, so that it's unpredictable. We genuinely could flip it this year. Michigan has had a massive redistricting reform pass, which means that for the first time in a very long time, we'll have fair districts in which Democrats can compete, and we think there's a good chance to flip that. And then Arizona also has had some meaningful redistricting reform, so we'll see. Next slide, please. The others are longer term. All right, well, I'll pass it back to Don, but I'll just say we're just thrilled to work with you all. There are so many great opportunities to make a difference this cycle. Letter writing will be starting within a week. Going out in person to talk to voters, you know, registering voters, signing up new volunteers. There's so much good work that can be done. We don't need to wait. And it has never been, well, maybe I won't say it has never been more important, but it continues to be incredibly important that we do this work together, and building power together is how we win. So I appreciate all of you very much.
Thank you, Matt. That was great. We really appreciate you taking the time too, and we're looking forward to that first letter writing campaign, and we're looking forward to working with you and meeting your son. Catherine?